My best friend and I spent 3 years strategizing to win over the two major villains in the book. One was the ruthless and cunning regent who held sway over the court. The other was the seemingly righteous but secretly scheming guardian general of the nation. The moment we succeeded, the system gave us a choice: stay or return. We chose to stay, not because we were love-struck, but for the sake of freedom. Modern 9-to-5 life is completely incomparable to this. The regent spends his days stirring up storms in the imperial court, while the Grand General of the nation drills troops on the training grounds all day long. My best friend and I only need to play the role of devoted lovers when they occasionally return to the estate. The rest of the time is spent indulging in food, drink, and pleasure, squandering it all recklessly. Everything changed when the original novel's female protagonist appeared before them. She was the youngest princess of the current dynasty, the beloved darling of all. She grew up with the two major antagonists, who had adored her since childhood, yet at the age of 10, she was kidnapped by enemy spies to protect those two antagonists, vanishing without a trace ever since. My best friend and I finally remembered our roles as the villainous supporting characters in the original story. The ending was being torn limb from limb and having our bones ground to dust by two antagonists for the sake of the original story's female lead. My best friend and I immediately decided, run. Fortunately, we had the foresight to stash gold, silver, and jewels in various places during our travels, enough for us to live extravagantly without relying on anyone for the rest of our lives. Once the decision was made, my best friend and I devised a meticulous plan. Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng were half-brothers sharing the same father. Their forces collaborated both inside and outside the imperial court, with spies spread throughout the entire Li dynasty. To escape their control, the only option was to flee to the southernmost Shiyu kingdom, which was beyond the Li dynasty's jurisdiction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. Coincidentally, a theatrical troupe from Shiyu Kingdom had recently arrived in the capital to perform during the Lantern Festival and would be departing in a few days. The theatrical troupe numbered several thousand strong, and my best friend and I planned to blend into their ranks, leaving the capital together with them. Before that, we'd create the illusion of being kidnapped by spies from the northern barbarian kingdom, diverting Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng's attention northward. This way, my best friend and I could secretly follow the theatrical troupe all the way to Shiyu Kingdom without anyone noticing. Everything is ready except for the east wind. Both my best friend and I were eagerly counting down the 3 days until our departure. Never thought that despite all precautions, there was one oversight tonight. Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng actually returned to the mansion together, upon hearing the servant's report. The joy on both my and my best friend's faces froze simultaneously. Me, weren't they supposed to be accompanying Murong Xuanyan in the palace? How are they back? The servant who came to inform us was an informant my best friend and I had cultivated within the Sheng household. With a grave expression, they told us, His Highness and the General have brought Princess Xuanyan back with them. They're heading this way now. A disdainful sneer appeared on my face. So they've come to force our hand. My best friend, screw them. I don't want to see their faces right now anyway. Clearly, my best friend and I were on the same page. I said to her, let's go drink at the tavern. My best friend high-fived me, her face beaming with excitement. All right, let's go drink until we drop. Although Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng are scoundrels, they usually dote on us. No matter how much we misbehaved, they never once punished us. Staying out all night drinking was just child's play to them. My best friend and I slipped out through the back gate of Sheng Manor with practiced ease, heading straight to our usual tavern. We drank ourselves silly in the tavern's most luxurious private room, staying drunk through the night. I didn't wake until noon the next day, with my friend still lying beside me. Unwilling to rise, looking out the window, I saw vendors hawking their wares, crowds flowing through the streets, and carriages rushing past. The sunlight today is just right. And everything exudes a peaceful atmosphere of tranquil years. I've already begun to envision the beautiful scene of my best friend and me living freely in the kingdom of Shiyu. Just then, a sudden knock came from outside the door. I suddenly remembered how Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng would personally come to drag us home whenever my best friend and I stayed out too long causing mischief. My best friend was also awakened by the knocking and crawled out of bed, looking at me with a dazed expression. Instinctively, we both thought the person outside was Sheng Linghan or Sheng Mingcheng, but it turned out to be one of Sheng Linghan's subordinates. Of course, he was busy accompanying his beauty. Why would he have spare time to care about them? Naturally, my best friend and I decided not to return, planning instead to watch the Shiyu Kingdom's performance that evening. The subordinates could do nothing with us and had to return to report. Tonight, the theatrical troupe from the Shiyu Kingdom will perform on the splendidly decorated flower boats. More than half a month has passed since autumn began, and night falls early. The tranquil river surface gradually lights up with lanterns, filled with singing, dancing, and revelry. My best friend and I didn't come here tonight just to watch the show. It's the day to deliver the deposit to our contact. The performance troupe is divided into several teams. To avoid getting caught together if we need to flee, my best friend and I joined different performance teams. After parting ways with my best friend, I boarded the painted boat where the meeting was about to take place and was led to an elegant private room on the top deck. The contact was the leader of the performance troupe assigned to this very boat. After handing her a full bag of earnest money, she weighed the heavy silver contentedly in her palm, her face full of assurances that she would definitely take me out of the capital to the kingdom of Shiyu. Sitting in this elegant private room on the painted pleasure boat, watching the lantern-lit river alive with song and dance outside, I didn't feel the slightest bit relaxed. I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath this surface of prosperity, something was lurking, leaving me unsettled. When the firework signal confirming my friend's successful rendezvous failed to appear, I knew my fears had been justified. My best friend must be in trouble. I rose anxiously, lifting my skirt as I hurried toward the private chamber's exit, only to be blocked right at the doorway. "Your Highness, please stay where you are." Two shadow guards stood at the entrance, weapons drawn and faces expressionless as they barred her path. Yet what was even more terrifying was the familiar, world-destroying pressure emanating from behind me. I turned stiffly to see Sheng Linghan's tall figure standing before the intricately carved window. His face was stern, his gloomy expression seeming capable of annihilating someone in the next second. In the past, when I had played wildly and stayed out late, he would appear suddenly like this to take me home. But this time it felt especially terrifying to me. It seemed like he knew something. "Sheng Linghan." I barely managed to force myself to calm down, squeezing out a smile uglier than tears. "You came to find me." I didn't even realize it myself out of fear. I directly called Sheng Linghan by his full name. "If this prince didn't come find you, would you have already fled to Shiyu Kingdom?" With a darkened expression, he advanced toward me until I was backed into a corner, his large hand caressing my face that had turned pale with terror. "Surprised, wondering how I knew about your plans." Sheng Linghan flung a stack of papers at me. These were the papers I used to write my escape plans, hidden very discreetly. Even if he could find them, there was no way he should have been able to understand their meaning, because all these plans were written in English. Quite the elaborate scheme. Sheng Linghan's icy voice rang in my ears. "It seems I underestimated you. If it weren't for Xuanyan having a friend from the Western nations, I would never have known you actually understand their language." It's Murong Xuanyan again. "You should still remember what this prince once said." Sheng Linghan's hand, which had been caressing my face, gradually moved to my neck. A sudden chill ran down my spine, my legs gave way, and I collapsed to the ground as his words from before flashed through my mind. That was when I was halfway through the strategy and felt like I couldn't go on, planning to run away. He grabbed me into his arms and said with a teasing smile, "If you dare run, I'll break your legs." I knew this seemingly joking remark was truer than the truth itself. Now that Sheng Linghan could find me here, it meant my best friend had long been captured by Sheng Minqing. Because Sheng Linghan thoroughly enjoyed the sensation of watching his prey struggle desperately yet remain trapped in his grasp, while Sheng Minqing preferred directly capturing people to torment them. To put it simply, both brothers were perverts. Noticing my prolonged silence, Sheng Linghan swept his cloak back and crouched down, observing me with keen interest. After a long pause, he finally spoke the cruelest words in the calmest tone. "Tell me, do you prefer the white prison or the black prison?" The white prison and the black prison were dungeons built jointly by the brothers Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng. housing the most brutal tortures and torments. Either one would make life worse than death. I was so terrified that my face turned pale. Remembering the pact I made with my best friend, if any part of our escape plan went wrong, we would prepare for the worst, suicide. After successfully completing the mission, my best friend and I chose to stay here for the rest of our lives. The system promised us that as long as we died in this world, we could immediately return to our original world and continue living. Since we can no longer survive here, the only option is to go back. Convinced my best friend shared the same thought. I resolutely drew the dagger hidden in my sleeve and plunged it straight into my heart, yet I still chickened out. The stab missed the vital artery near the heart. When I regained consciousness 2 days later, Sheng Linghan was sleeping beside me, holding me tightly in his arms. Remembering the terrifying look in Sheng Linghan's eyes before I blacked out, I broke into a cold sweat and shrank back, trembling uncontrollably. Disturbed from sleep, Sheng Linghan frowned, seeing the fear in my eyes. His gaze froze for a second before he forcibly pulled me back into his embrace. "Why are you running away?" Before I could recover from the shock, I opened my mouth but no sound came out. "Speak." His tone softened slightly, yet his sinister gaze remained fixed intently on me. "I know if I don't answer well, I might face the choice between white prison and black prison again." A strong will to survive made me switch my demeanor in an instant. Tears instantly welled up in my eyes as I said pitifully, "Because I'm afraid you'll grow tired of me." My show of weakness successfully put Sheng Linghan in a great mood. In his eyes, I would go to any lengths and scheme tirelessly just to keep his affection. This was exactly what pleased him. He simply thought this was my new trick to grab his attention. So he held me in high spirits, his tone softening considerably. "This prince has said, as long as you obediently serve as my regent's consort, I will protect you for a lifetime. So." Still thinking of running away, I quickly shook my head. "I won't run away anymore." I thought this would make him relax his guard over me, but I never expected his next words to feel like a bucket of cold water being poured over my head. "For the next few days, you'll stay in the Listening Wind Pavilion to recover from your injuries. You're not allowed to go anywhere." I was placed under house arrest by Sheng Linghan in the Listening Wind Pavilion, and the informants my best friend and I had developed within the Sheng residence were all taken out. It was as if the people in the Listening Wind Pavilion had made a pact. They refused to speak a word about anything happening outside the pavilion. I couldn't get any news about my best friend. Fortunately, we were certain that my best friend, like me, hadn't succeeded in committing suicide. Otherwise, as the general's wife, her household would have already held a funeral. I thought to wait a few more days until Sheng Linghan let his guard down and lifted my house arrest. Then I could see my best friend and make new plans together. Unexpectedly, within just 3 days, I received news that something had happened to my best friend. The entire Sheng residence knew of my exceptional medical skills, so when my best friend had an accident, Sheng Minqing immediately had me brought from the Listening Wind Pavilion to the Treading Snow courtyard to treat her. Seeing my best friend drenched and barely breathing on the bed, with a room full of kneeling physicians, I instantly knew her condition was critical. Without a moment's delay, I rushed to her bedside to examine her. The moment I reached my diagnosis, I felt as if the sky had collapsed. My best friend not only went into shock from the drowning scare, but also had a miscarriage. I gently lifted a corner of the blanket, and sure enough, bright red blood had soaked through the bedding. She was always the one who loved to laugh the most, yet even in unconsciousness, her brows remained tightly furrowed, her pale little face was completely drained of color, looking utterly pitiful. I could even guess that she didn't even know she was pregnant, and how heartbroken she must have been when she woke up to learn she had miscarried. I immediately wrote a prescription and had someone prepare the medicine, then asked everyone to leave. Sheng Minqing, who usually couldn't stand me, was so startled by my grave expression that he quickly cleared everyone out as I'd requested. Only after everyone had left did my best friend lying on the bed slowly open her eyes. Actually, I knew my best friend had woken up when I was about to have someone prepare the medicine earlier. I quickly sat by her bedside, holding her hand, and asked with heartache, "Does it hurt?" She shook her head, her face deathly pale. Even if I didn't say anything, she could feel her own condition and knew what was happening to her. 2 streams of tears silently slid down from the corners of her eyes. I wiped the tears from her face with a pained heart, only to see her eyes filled with hatred. I had never seen someone as pure-hearted as my best friend wear such an expression before. With a determined gaze, she said to me, "Yang Yang, I can't bear to leave like this. I want to avenge my unborn child." In an instant, I understood. "Are you saying Murong Xuanyan pushed you into the water?" My best friend nodded and recounted everything that had just happened. It turned out that Murong Xuanyan had been staying at the snow-treading courtyard these past few days, and what's more, she was occupying her best friend's room. Just because Murong Xuanyan said she liked it, Sheng Mingcheng made her best friend give up the room for her. Her best friend didn't want to get entangled with Murong Xuanyan over a room in the first place, so she readily gave it up. Unexpectedly, Murong Xuanyan took the initiative to provoke her. Not only did he order her around to serve tea and water, but he also took possession of all her favorite jewelry and trinkets. What chilled her the most was that Sheng Mingcheng silently allowed all of this. But that wasn't enough. Murong Xuanyan deliberately acted intimately with Sheng Mingcheng in front of her best friend, trying to provoke her. Her best friend had already given up any illusions about Sheng Mingcheng and thought that if Murong Xuanyan truly liked him so much, she might as well let her have him, so she could free herself sooner and find a way to help me escape this misery. That's why she wanted to meet Murong Xuanyan alone to discuss handing Sheng Mingcheng over to her. They agreed to meet at the lakeside pavilion behind the snow-treading courtyard, but who could have guessed Murong Xuanyan wouldn't even listen. She just pushed her straight into the lake. Just hearing this, I could feel how much suffering my best friend had endured these past few days. I was instantly filled with righteous indignation and wanted to confront Murong Xuanyan, but my best friend grabbed my hand and weakly shook her head, saying, "Don't go," though my best friend was naive. She wasn't the type to swallow insults in silence. Seeing my confusion, she said anxiously, "What the system said earlier has come true. Murong Xuanyan has the protagonist's halo. No matter what she says, Sheng Mingcheng and Sheng Linghan will believe her." And she didn't finish, but I knew what she was about to say. The system warned both me and my best friend when we chose to stay. Once the original female lead returns, her protagonist aura would naturally draw everyone's attention, including Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng. Moreover, as the original story's villainous supporting characters, even if we don't attack Murong Xuanyan, she would still harbor hostility toward us. Following the original plot, she would view us as enemies and take aggressive actions against me and my best friend, and Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng would, as per the original storyline, unconditionally protect and trust Murong Xuanyan, even if she twists right and wrong. They would eliminate us to safeguard her. This is precisely why my best friend and I immediately planned to escape upon learning of Murong Xuanyan's return. I calmed down and discussed our next steps with my best friend. I told her about how our escape plan had been exposed days earlier, and how I'd attempted suicide right in front of Sheng Linghan. As expected, my friend had the same idea. She'd thrown herself into the river before Sheng Mingcheng, trying to drown herself, but he fished her out. Perhaps it was because of these tuna drownings that her body couldn't withstand the strain, leading to her miscarriage. After calming down, both my best friend and I felt unwilling to just die like this. Actually, since the escape plan failed, I had another backup plan, faking death. But faking death requires a special drug. Although I obtained the formula for the death-simulating drug, I wasn't very confident about successfully brewing it. For the happiness of my best friend and me in the second half of our lives, I still decided to give it a try. I was just about to discuss the details of the fake death plan with my best friend when a knock came at the door. Murong Xuanyan's nanny walked in carrying a bowl of medicinal soup, accompanied by Murong Xuanyan, Sheng Mingcheng, and Sheng Linghan. Every face was one my best friend and I didn't want to see, yet they had all gathered together. At this moment, I was absolutely certain I would lead my best friend to freedom. Clearly, my best friend didn't want to see them either. Having closed her eyes to feign continued unconsciousness, the matron approached with medicine, offering a perfunctory curtsy before glancing at my friend and saying, "Your Highness, the medicine is ready. Since the lady hasn't woken, we'll have to force it down her throat, otherwise, when it cools, it'll lose its potency." This was obviously ill-intentioned. I stood firmly in front of the nanny, my tone resolute. "If the medicine cools, it can be reheated." The nanny pretended to hesitate, Glancing at Murong Xuanyan immediately spoke up with apparent concern. Sister Shuyang, as a healer, you must know the consequences of delaying medication. Please let the nanny go and administer the medicine to Sister Yujie. The nanny, having received permission, immediately ignored my attempts to stop her and tried to push me aside. Determined to force the medicine down my friend's throat, they were simply going too far. I couldn't take it anymore and reached out to snatch the medicine bowl from the nanny's hands. The nanny was incredibly strong. As we struggled, scalding medicine splashed onto the back of my hand, bearing the pain. I seized the moment to push back, causing most of the medicine to spill onto the nanny's hand instead. Only then did I withdraw my hand. Satisfied, the old nanny cried out in pain with an "ah," and instantly dropped the bowl to the ground. She looked up, clearly holding back her breath as she said, "This servant truly didn't realize Her Highness could be so reckless. It doesn't matter if this servant gets scalded. But what if Your Highness had been burned? I'm not that delicate." I hid my reddened hand behind my back, then turned to glance at my best friend lying on the bed and sighed in relief. Fortunately, I stopped the nanny from forcing that scalding medicinal brew down my best friend's throat. The consequences would have been unthinkable. Just then, my hand was suddenly enveloped in a large, warm palm. I turned to find Sheng Linghan standing beside me, holding my hand. His brows furrowed slightly as he noticed the red marks on my fair skin. "Does it hurt?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not at all." Seeing this, a shadow flickered in Murong Xuanyan's eyes before she quickly approached Sheng Linghan, her face full of apology. "Brother Linghan, the old nanny is getting on in years and might have accidentally hurt Shuyang's sister. Please don't blame her." Sheng Linghan, seeing her remorseful expression, immediately released my hand, the tenderness on his face vanishing completely. "It's fine. She was reckless first. This scalding will serve as a lesson to prevent it from happening again." I lowered my hand. Utterly disgusted by Murong Xuanyan's underhanded tactics, I sat by my best friend's bedside, using a handkerchief to wipe the sweat from her temples, then issued a clear dismissal to the others. "Yujie needs to rest. With so many of you crowding around, you'll disturb her. Please leave." The moment my words fell, Sheng Minqing, who had remained silent almost the entire time, finally spoke. "It's been so long. Why hasn't she woken up yet?" I could hear the urgency in his words. But I still felt furious about what he had done. If the general truly understood the whole story and knew what my sister has been through, you wouldn't be saying such things. Sheng Minqing's expression darkened instantly, his voice strained as he asked, "The child, can it really not be saved?" I forced myself to calm down and said with a grave expression, "If Yujie hadn't been pushed into the water today, the child would still be safely nestled in her womb right now." As I spoke, I deliberately glanced in Murong Xuanyan's direction. The nanny immediately stepped in front of her, glaring at me with widened eyes. "What does the princess consort mean by these words? Are you suggesting our princess pushed the general's wife into the water?" I looked at her calmly and stated, "The pavilion at the lake center is spacious with railings. How could my sister-in-law have suddenly fallen into the water while standing there perfectly fine?" The nanny opened her mouth but seemed taken aback by my unwavering stance. The atmosphere was about to turn tense when Murong Xuanyan stepped forward, her face full of kindness, and said, "Earlier, Sister Yujie invited me to admire the flowers by the lake. It was my carelessness that I failed to hold her back in time, causing her to fall into the water. Your Highness, why must you humble yourself for others? This servant clearly saw that the general's wife intended to push you into the lake. But you dodged, and she ended up falling in herself." Murong Xuanyan and her old maid thus played their parts in perfect harmony, spinning a tale more convincing than an opera. No doubt, they had already performed this twisted farce in front of Sheng Minqing. I clenched my fists, using the last shred of my remaining rationality to suppress the impulse to slap these two people slandering my best friend. Unexpectedly, after seeing the aggrieved expression on Murong Xuanyan's face, Sheng Minqing immediately said to her, "What happened today has nothing to do with Xuanyan. Losing the child is entirely her own fault for bringing it upon herself. I don't believe Yujie would do such a thing." I immediately erupted, turning a stern gaze toward Murong Xuanyan and demanding, "Is the truth of today's events really as the princess has described? How dare you?" Sheng Linghan scolded me in a low voice, "Hurry up and apologize to Her Highness the Princess." Seeing the utterly unfamiliar look in Sheng Linghan's eyes, I instantly calmed down. In this entire room, apart from my best friend, everyone else was an enemy. I knew that if I remained stubborn and refused to yield, I might not even get to see my best friend again. I had no choice but to lower my head and compromise for now. Murong Xuanyuo still had to maintain her innocent and pure image in front of Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng, so she didn't give me too much trouble. I was taken back to the Listening Wind Pavilion by Sheng Linghan and remained silent the entire time, even as he led me into the bedroom. Picking up the medical book placed by the bedside, I began reading it on my own. Sheng Linghan sat down beside me. I knew his gaze was fixed on me the whole time, but I never acknowledged him. After a while, I was suddenly pulled onto his lap. He took out an exquisitely crafted wooden box and slowly opened it, revealing a hairpin adorned with a begonia flower design. I love begonia flowers very much, and he always buys things related to them to please me. I saw this on my way back to the residence and thought you'd like it, so I bought it for you. Do you like it? Sheng Linghan finished speaking, his gaze resting on my face, hoping to see a happy expression, but I remained expressionless and silent. He didn't get angry either, patiently placing the hairpin in my hair. It really suits you, he said. He slowly leaned in, planting a kiss on my cheek, then gradually moved downward. When he tried to kiss my lips, I dodged away. If I were the one who fell into the water today, would you believe me? I looked at him earnestly, waiting for his reply. He frowned slightly, somewhat impatiently saying, Xuanyan would never harm anyone, so this matter won't happen. What if it does happen? Sheng Linghan placed his hand on my face and declared with absolute certainty, then it could only mean someone wanted to harm her, but I won't allow anyone to hurt Xuanyan. You'd better not even think about it. Suddenly, I realized how ridiculous that flicker of hope rising in my heart had been. I'm tired, exhausted. I tried to put some distance between Sheng Linghan and myself, only to be forcibly pulled back. It was painfully obvious that Sheng Linghan had lost all patience to humor me. His tone turned dark as he said, you know what, if it weren't for my brother, I would never let Zhou Yujie off the hook. His gaze was sinister as he stared at me. As long as you behave and stay by my side to serve me, I promise you'll enjoy endless wealth and luxury. His words chilled me to the bone and made him feel utterly unfamiliar. At that moment, I was absolutely certain, no matter how much Sheng Linghan might like me, I would never hold a place in his heart comparable to Murong Xuanyan. I avoided Sheng Linghan's advances, claiming I wasn't feeling well and wanted to return to my room to rest, but he dragged me back and forcibly pressed me onto the bed. The next day, I was awakened by voices outside the door. The sun was already high in the sky outside, yet Sheng Linghan still lay asleep beside me. I gently slipped out of Sheng Linghan's embrace and tried to get up to dress, only to be tightly pulled back into his arms. Sheng Linghan had also woken up. He wanted to hold me and sleep a little longer, but the noise outside the door made it impossible to stay in bed. He could only pull me up to get dressed together. I had already recognized the voice clamoring to come in outside. It was Murong Xuanyan. I knew she would go all out to deal with me and my best friend, but I never expected her to cross the line like this. I had just finished putting on my undergarments and was about to help Sheng Linghan with his outer robe when Murong Xuanyan pushed the door open and walked in. Behind her followed the guard who had failed to stop Murong Xuanyan. His head bowed as he awaited punishment for his dereliction of duty. Murong Xuanyan, however, didn't seem the least bit aware of how inappropriate her behavior was. Carrying a food tray, she walked in with an expectant expression. Brother Linghan, it's been years since we last met. I never knew you'd become so fond of sleeping. Xuanning, I've prepared some porridge for you. Why don't you get up and have some? As she spoke, she reached out to gently draw back the last curtain shielding the bed where Sheng Linghan and I were lying. When she caught sight of me behind Sheng Linghan, her gentle face instantly registered a flicker of surprise. As if completely caught off guard, she lightly covered her mouth with a look of deep regret. I'm sorry. Brother Linghan, I didn't know Sister Xuyang was here too. No matter, since you're here, let's dine together. Sheng Linghan spoke while pulling me up from the bed with him, showing not the slightest hesitation. I don't need to turn around to imagine Murong Xuanyan's ugly expression. Right now, I can't begin to guess what Sheng Linghan is actually thinking. The only thing I'm certain of is that I absolutely don't want to perform Burning Winter with them. Despite the steaming breakfast spread before me, including my favorite dishes, I found myself with no appetite at all. After absent-mindedly picking at my food for a few bites, I found myself staring blankly at the rustling fallen leaves outside. All I wanted was for this breakfast to end quickly so I could go check on my best friend's condition. Just then, Sheng Linghan placed a piece of braised fish into her nearly untouched rice bowl and gently reminded, "Don't let your mind wander during meals." I merely glanced at the braised fish and said offhandedly, "I'm full, eat a little more," Sheng Linghan commanded gently. Just then, Murong Xuanyan suddenly spoke up teasingly, "Brother Linghan, we ladies always eat carefully. If we eat more after we're full, our bodies won't be able to handle it." I hadn't expected Murong Xuanyan to suddenly become so kind-hearted, and couldn't help but glance at her. Meeting my gaze, Murong Xuanyan smiled with utmost gentleness, "Shuyang sister. Look how beautiful the falling leaves are outside. I heard from Brother Linghan that you love dancing the most. Since I've finished eating, why don't we go dance together?" I didn't believe for a second that she simply wanted to dance with me, but I just wanted to see what she was up to this time, so I followed her outside. Sheng Linghan was skilled at playing the qin, so he accompanied Murong Xuanyan and me with his music. Meanwhile, Murong Xuanyan and I stood beneath the rustling leaves of the tree, dancing gracefully to the melody of his qin. Originally, Murong Xuanyan and I were dancing separately, not interfering with each other. Gradually, Murong Xuanyan began moving closer to me, intentionally or not, even performing several difficult spins and jumps directly toward me. Sure enough, the fox's tail was revealed. I instantly realized she wanted to pull the same trick on me that she had used to frame her best friend. With a spinning sidestep, I dodged past her and feigned a twisted ankle before she could pretend to have one herself. This is what they call walking the enemy's path, so they have nowhere left to go. Sheng Linghan immediately stopped playing the zither when she saw this, came over, and crouched beside me to check on me. "How could you be so careless? Is it serious?" I shook my head. Nothing vital was hurt. Sheng Linghan knew my medical skills were exceptional. And since I had a good grasp of this minor issue, he finally relaxed a bit. Just then, a sudden thud came from behind. It was Murong Xuanyan who had fallen. Clutching her foot, she looked at Sheng Linghan with a pained expression. "Brother Linghan, my foot hurts so much." Sheng Linghan stood up and walked over to her, asking, "Can you still move?" Murong Xuanyan lifted her face to look at him, her deer-like eyes brimming with tears, looking utterly desperate. "My leg was injured before. I'm so scared I'll never be able to stand again." "Don't be afraid." Sheng Linghan gently picked her up from the ground while comforting her, his face full of anxiety as he urgently instructed Pang, "Summon the imperial physician immediately." At this moment, for some reason, I suddenly felt the chill of autumn's cold air. The moment Sheng Linghan lifted Murong Xuanyan, I could already tell there was nothing wrong with her foot in that state. Yet Sheng Linghan, blinded by concern, completely forgot about me. The physician, staying by Murong Xuanyan's side until the imperial physician hurried over from the palace to examine her and prescribe medicine. The medicine prescribed by the imperial physician was all tonic for nourishing the body. Clearly, they were all seasoned practitioners of social niceties, seeing through things without voicing them. However, Murong Xuanyan must have truly suffered greatly during her years of captivity, as prolonged malnutrition had left her with a deficiency syndrome. The deficiency syndrome was indeed diagnosed by the imperial physicians together, but how to treat it with medicine became a major challenge. Just when even the imperial physicians admitted they were powerless against it, Sheng Linghan finally remembered that I, a highly skilled physician, was still present. He asked if I had any way to treat Murong Xuanyan. In modern times, Murong Xuanyan's deficiency syndrome would simply be anemia caused by malnutrition. Of course I have a way to completely cure her of this deficiency, but considering all the despicable things Murong Xuanyan did to her best friend, I really don't want to waste my medical skills on her. Just then, I suddenly remembered that the fake death medicine I developed was still missing one crucial ingredient. This ingredient is called hanrue grass, which grows on the cliffs of extremely damp and shady areas in the south. To obtain it would be harder than ascending to heaven. I was just worrying about how to find a reason to get this medicinal herb when, under the pretext of treating Murong Xuanyan's illness, I mentioned the name of the hanrue grass. I said that only by obtaining this herb could Murong Xuanyan be saved. To my surprise, Sheng Linghan agreed without hesitation to search for this herb. I had thought Sheng Linghan would send someone to search for the Hanrui grass, never expecting he would go himself for Murong Xuanyan's sake. 10 days later, Sheng Linghan returned safely with the Hanrui grass. He was covered in dust and exhaustion, clearly having spent those 10 days in great anxiety. I was just about to tell him to rest and leave the Hanrui grass to me. He insisted on watching me put the stamen grass into the medicinal broth I was preparing for Murong Xuanyan before he would leave. He said the stamen grass was already extinct, and this was the last plant he could find. He absolutely had to see me brew this medicine with his own eyes. Left with no choice, I could only chop the stamen grass and add it to Murong Xuanyan's medicine pot, watching as Sheng Linghan hurried away with the decoction to deliver it to her. At that moment, I knew I had utterly failed. I came to snow-treading courtyard as usual to visit my best friend. These past few days, my best friend's health had nearly fully recovered. Her greatest interest each day was asking me about the progress of the fake death medicine. Today, the moment I entered her bedroom door, she probably noticed something was off about me and asked what was wrong. I said, "I'm sorry, I failed." I told my best friend what had just happened, and she immediately comforted me, saying, "It's okay, at worst, we can just go back, you can be a doctor again, and I'll go back to being a therapist." Seeing that I was still upset, my best friend eagerly grabbed my hand and shook it, her face full of anticipation. "Bubble tea, fried chicken, cola, I've been craving them for so long, that's right. From now on, we'll be free." My best friend and I exchanged a knowing smile. We unanimously decided to stick to the original plan, only this time, it would be a real death. Because only by truly dying in this world could we return to our original one. With this decision made, I suddenly felt everything could be let go. I returned to the Listening Wind Pavilion, originally intending to revisit the pharmacy to research a new drug that would allow my best friend and me to pass away peacefully, but I caught the scent of blood wafting from Sheng Linghan's bedroom. After hesitating for a few seconds, I still walked toward Sheng Linghan's bedroom. Inside the bedroom, Sheng Linghan sat there, his upper garment already removed. A long, horrifying gash was exposed on his bare back, a shocking sight. Even I, a physician accustomed to bloody scenes, felt my heart race with fear. Those were injuries he accidentally sustained while searching for the Hanrui grass. The guard applying medicine to Sheng Linghan appeared rather clumsy. As usual, whenever Sheng Linghan got injured, it was always me who treated his wounds. Sheng Linghan dismissed the attendant applying medicine when he saw me arrive. I stepped forward, picked up the medicinal wine and gauze, and began tending to his wounds. Sheng Linghan's voice came from in front of me. "Are you afraid?" I replied calmly, "No." It took me quite a while to properly tend to Sheng Linghan's wound. As I gently wiped the sweat from my forehead, I suddenly realized that only the two of us remained in this bedroom. An inexplicable discomfort welled up from the depths of my heart. Though we were once so intimate, I found myself increasingly averse to being alone with Sheng Linghan. I made an excuse to go brew medicine, wanting to leave, but Sheng Linghan forcefully pulled me back and sat me on his lap. I looked up and suddenly met his gaze. Seeing the unmistakable affection in his eyes directed at me, I froze. In the past, I had treated this affection as my trophy. Now, I suddenly feel a tumult of mixed emotions. I suddenly wanted to know what expression Sheng Linghan would have when he heard the news of my death a few days later. Sheng Linghan looked at me with this gaze, staring at me for a long time. I couldn't help but ask him, "Your Highness, why are you looking at me like this?" He said to me very seriously, "Ayang, let's have a child." I froze completely, instinctively wanting to escape his embrace. Sheng Linghan, however, furrowed his brows and held me tighter. "You refuse." I averted my gaze and evasively replied, "Yujie just lost her child. I don't want to think about this right now." The next second, I heard Sheng Linghan's accusatory voice. "Why do you care so much about her?" I said matter-of-factly, "She's my sister. If I don't care about her, who else should I care about?" I didn't think there was anything wrong with that statement, but Sheng Linghan got angry. He turned my face toward him and said with extreme dominance, "Your eyes, and your heart, can only have this prince in them." Not wanting to argue with him, I went along with his words. "I am your regent princess consort, of course. My eyes see only you, and my heart thinks only of you. That's not what I want to hear. For some reason, Sheng Linghan suddenly became serious. Have you forgotten? When you were infatuated with me, you said that even if I were an ordinary person, I would still be the one who held your heart. You said your eyes would always light up with joy for me. But you're no longer the Sheng Linghan I once loved, I silently replied in my heart, but never spoke the words aloud. Sheng Linghan, I called his name, gazing at him with unwavering determination. No matter what happens, my eyes will always light up with joy for you. As if comforted by these words, he cupped my face and leaned in to kiss me. The fake death potion wasn't successfully made, it turned out to be real poison. I added a few more medicinal herbs to ensure both my best friend and I could depart peacefully and painlessly after taking it. Within a single day, I finished preparing the medicine, forming it into pills, one for my best friend, one for myself, and we took them together, keeping each other company. This medicine wouldn't kill us instantly, it would only gradually drain our vitality, until we withered away completely, our life force exhausted. The very next day, I suddenly coughed up blood and collapsed. Sheng Linghan had nearly summoned every renowned physician in the capital to examine me. The doctors diagnosed me with overexertion and the presence of several conflicting toxins in my body. When I awoke, Sheng Linghan anxiously grasped my hand and asked, "Why are there toxins in your body?" I turned my head away and whispered, "If not for this, how could Murong Xuanyan have recovered?" The implication was that I had personally tested poisons to help Murong Xue refine medicine, and ruined my health from round-the-clock drug preparation. Sheng Linghan naturally understood my implication. He remained silent for several seconds before tightly grasping my hand and promising, "I will definitely cure you completely." Only I knew the truth, that I would never fully recover. The effects of the medicine soon took hold on my best friend as well. Her constitution was different from mine. Having suffered a miscarriage and then suddenly caught a cold, her old illness flared up, leaving her unconscious for 3 full days and nights, and so, both my best friend and I grew weaker by the day. The Sheng household cycled through dozens of physicians, but none could bring about any improvement. Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng still held some affection for us. Together, they left the capital to seek out a renowned physician from Penglai to treat my best friend and me. Though my best friend and I were feeling under the weather, we still wanted to enjoy the scenery one last time, so we went together to the Sheng family's back garden to admire the flowers. At this time of year, only the chrysanthemums were in full bloom, but the chrysanthemums were quite beautiful too. My best friend and I both felt a bit happier seeing such lovely flowers in bloom. At this very moment, someone they least wanted to see arrived, shedding her innocent, delicate facade. She stepped right on the chrysanthemums my best friend and I had just been admiring. About to leave this place, I no longer wanted to keep avoiding conflicts. I shielded my friend behind me and confronted Murong Xuanyan directly. "Seems the princess has recovered quite well." With energy to spare for trampling things in the back garden, Murong Xuanyan looked quite smug. "Indeed, thanks to my sister's medicine, I'm doing very well now, though it seems my sister herself might not have long to live. The wheel of heaven turns, those who commit evil deeds will eventually face retribution. Your Highness should think carefully about how to survive when that time comes." Murong Xuanyan was so enraged by me that she nearly lost her royal composure, lashing out on the spot. She knew Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng had stationed many additional hidden guards in the residence, so she didn't dare make too much of a scene. When open methods failed, she secretly withheld the medicine meant to restore my best friend and me to health. Thanks to her instigation, both my best friends and my physical conditions took a sharp turn for the worse. When the news spread beyond the estate, Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng, who hadn't yet found the renowned physician from Penglai, had no choice but to rush back. Yet despite their return, my best friends and my health showed no signs of improvement. From that day on, Sheng Linghan stayed by my side almost day and night, eagerly hoping for my swift recovery. Surprisingly, he repeatedly ignored Murong Xuanyan's requests for an audience, until one afternoon several days later, when Sheng Mingcheng burst into my bedroom like a madman, insisting on dragging me to see my best friend. Only then did I learn that my best friend had passed away before me. What's laughable is that the reason my best friend left a few days earlier than I expected was actually because of Murong Xuanyan. Originally, Sheng Mingcheng had been keeping vigil by my best friend's side all night long, just like Sheng Linghan. Perhaps Murong Xuanyan sensed that both Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng were ignoring her, which made her feel insecure, so she started feigning illness. Not long ago, she even sent someone to inform Sheng Mingcheng that she was on the verge of death. Sheng Mingcheng still left her best friend to go see Murong Xuanyan. In that brief span of time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, her best friend secretly ate the candied hawthorn that Sheng Mingcheng had brought to tempt her into recovering faster, which triggered a throat condition, causing her to cough up blood and die. That little glutton of hers was ultimately taken away by her love for good food. And after Sheng Mingcheng received the news from me that her best friend was beyond saving, she completely lost her mind. Bring my best friend's body into the secret room, no one is allowed near it. I wanted Sheng Linghan to help bury my best friend properly, but all I got was refusal, so I stopped eating, drinking, and sleeping, just sitting blankly by the window, hoping to end everything here soon and reunite with my best friend. After I went without food or water for a second day, Sheng Linghan finally lost his patience. Gripping my shoulders, he roared, "Jiao Shuyang, do you want to die?" Not a chance. His voice was dark as he mercilessly pinched my chin, pouring medicine down my throat like a madman, but I only grew more stubborn, spitting it all out along with blood. My gaze was hollow as I looked at him, my face as pale as paper, as if I might shatter the next second. Sheng Linghan panicked instantly, clutching me tightly in his arms and pleading, "I beg you, Yang. Don't leave me." Okay, I closed my eyes, no longer wanting to utter another word. Perhaps Sheng Linghan had gone mad too. He actually began threatening me with my best friend's corpse. He said as long as I obediently cooperated with the treatment, he would agree to help me retrieve my best friend's body for burial. So every day, I forced myself to eat a little and took my medicine on time, sleeping as well, but I knew my days were numbered. That day, Sheng Linghan brought some flowers from somewhere for me to see. Seeing that I looked much better, he wanted to take me outside to see these flowers together. I knew in my heart that this was merely a fleeting moment of clarity before the end. I would soon be reunited with my best friend, knowing that if I died suddenly, Sheng Linghan would surely discard all these flowers. I suggested transplanting them to the back garden. To my surprise, Sheng Linghan actually picked up a hoe and started digging the ground himself. I sat quietly on the recliner behind him, watching him. I don't know how long it had been when I slowly closed my eyes. My soul gradually drifted out of my body, and I saw my best friend standing right beside me. She had been silently watching all of this, wanting to give me a hug, but then remembered we were both in spirit form now. My best friend sighed as she saw Sheng Linghan still hoeing in the distance. "It's rare for him to do these things for you," but I said with relief, "this no longer holds any meaning for Jiao Shuyang." After a while longer, Sheng Linghan called my name but received no response. Finally realizing something was wrong, he stumbled to the side of my corpse, touched my face in disbelief, and found it had long turned cold. Sheng Linghan had also gone mad. He and Sheng Mingcheng frantically re-examined past events together, discovering that Murong Xuanyan had been fueling the flames behind everything. When Murong Xuanyan saw all her misdeeds exposed, she knelt before them, weeping pitifully with an air of vulnerability. "Brother Linghan, Brother Mingcheng, I just loved you both too much. I couldn't bear to see you taken away by others. Are you really going to hurt me for the sake of those two unrelated outsiders?" Yet her pleas for mercy were met with no forgiveness. Sheng Linghan exchanged a glance with the shadow guard, and Murong Xuanyan was dragged away. Murong Xuanyan was thrown into the black prison, charged with the crime of attempting to murder the regent's consort and the wife of the nation-protecting general. Screams echoed through the black prison for 3 days and 3 nights, but no one knew what horrors she endured. At the Listening Wind Pavilion, outside Sheng Linghan's bedroom, the attending maids and servants all wore grim expressions. Inside the room, Sheng Linghan awoke from his slumber, propping himself up on one elbow. He gazed intently at the figure beside him as if he could never get his fill of looking. The woman lying beside him was clearly a beauty even in the stillness of sleep, yet her face was deathly pale, her delicate lips completely devoid of color. Sleeping in again, Sheng Linghan tenderly smoothed the disheveled strands of hair at her temples, his voice gentle as he said, "Wait for me to return from morning court, and Iron can have breakfast with me." all right? The quiet bedroom offered no response. Sheng Linghan leaned down to place a kiss on those pale lips, whispering softly, "Since you don't answer, I'll take it as your agreement." Then, the tall man got up from the bed, seemingly careful not to disturb the woman still asleep. His movements as he dressed and slipped on his shoes were deliberately gentle. Finally, he quietly opened the door and left the room, now reduced to a mere spirit. I silently watched this scene, my own corpse, which should have been lying in a coffin, still resting peacefully on the bed. Even as a soul, I could still feel that chilling dread creeping over me. I never expected Sheng Linghan could become just as insane as Sheng Mingcheng. Before long, my best friend's soul drifted back to me. Her expression looked even worse than before she went to the snow-treading courtyard. I said, "He still refuses to," before I could finish my words. My best friend already knew what I was about to say and shook her head sorrowfully. Though my best friend and I were already dead in this world, Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng still refused to let us go. Sheng Mingcheng spent his days holding my best friend's corpse in his secret chamber, allowing no one to come near. Perhaps Sheng Linghan had lost his mind. He refused to believe I was truly dead and slept with my corpse in his bed every night. Even if my best friend and I were to leave, we should at least give the Gao Shuyang and Gao Yujie of this world a proper farewell. So my best friend and I asked the system for help to let the Gao Shuyang and Gao Yujie of this world rest in peace. Since my best friend and I had completed the mission tasks exceptionally well, the system readily agreed to our request. It happened that the northern barbarian tribes were growing increasingly powerful, repeatedly harassing the borders of the Li dynasty, to provoke the Li dynasty. The spies of the barbarian state hidden in the capital even dared to infiltrate the Sheng residence. When Sheng Linghan returned from the morning court, he was immediately informed of the intruder's breach. The assassins employed sorcery rarely heard of in the Li dynasty, overpowering the residence's shadow guards. The corpses of Gao Shuyang and Gao Yujie were both stolen, while Sheng Mingcheng, a battle-hardened veteran, was knocked unconscious in the secret chamber. The assassin even left a secret letter to taunt. They would burn these two corpses to ashes within the borders of the Li dynasty. Sheng Linghan and Sheng Mingcheng dispatched men to conduct a citywide manhunt, yet not a trace of the assassin could be found. It wasn't until the fifth watch of the night that a raging fire in the woods on the outskirts of the capital shook the entire Sheng residence. The usually composed and self-restrained Sheng Linghan personally rode his horse straight to the outskirts. The flames filled the sky, reflected in his narrowed pupils. He hastily dismounted and stumbled into the scorching flames, his lips murmuring in a broken voice, "Yang." The hidden guards behind him tried to dissuade him. "Your Highness, don't act rashly," but he shoved them aside with a sweep of his palm, gripping his long sword as he madly slashed at the raging fire. Desperate to cut through the towering flames, the fire showed no sign of weakening, yet he continued to hack at it with all his might. The raging flames seemed ready to devour him whole. Moments later,
"Dead, actually. I've always wanted to properly, with you." The Gao Yujie before him stared coldly, gripping the arrow embedded in his chest and yanking it out with brutal force. What a pity. Gao Yujie is already dead. Her corpse was completely burned in the fire, reduced to ashes without even bone fragments remaining. Murong Xuanyan violently threw the human skin mask to the ground, revealing a swollen face covered with hideous scars. "It was you." Sheng Mingcheng seemed to have lost all strength, collapsing to his knees on the ground. "It's me. Bet you didn't expect me to still be alive." Murong Xuanyan's gaze at Sheng Mingcheng was filled with hatred, as if still unsatisfied. She yanked out several arrows from his body one after another, her twisted face wearing a sinister smile. "In this lifetime, you'll never lay eyes on that bitch again." The once high-spirited young general now had his eyes drenched in tears. He looked despairingly at the person laughing hysterically before him, suddenly reaching out to grip her neck, using the last ounce of his strength to twist and snap it. The laughter abruptly ceased. Sheng Mingcheng gazed at the brightest star in the night sky before collapsing heavily into the pool of blood beneath him. On the streets of Shiyu Kingdom, vendors and pedestrians alike wore all manner of bizarre and colorful garments, turning the entire avenue into a dazzling kaleidoscope. The local customs were liberal here, with all sorts of novel curiosities and an overwhelming variety of jewelry and ornaments. Sheng Linghan walked down the street, gazing at the dark iron hairpin in his hand, a touch of warmth surfacing in his eyes. "Yang." This place is far more novel than the capital, no wonder you loved it here." Having said this, he carefully cradled the hairpin in his palm, spotting some exquisitely shaped pastries. He recalled how Yang always loved nibbling on such treats with tea in the afternoons. He took out 2 silver ingots and asked the vendor to pack the finest flavors available. Just then, the playful laughter of children suddenly rang out behind him. Sheng Linghan turned his head and suddenly caught sight of a figure in cyan. The pastry in his hand fell to the ground as he rushed forward. Grasping her delicate wrist, his voice trembled with emotion as he called out her name, Yang. The woman snapped out of her daze and looked at him in surprise. An unfamiliar face met his gaze, and Sheng Linghan hastily released his grip, his words brimming with disappointment. "My apologies for startling you, miss." The woman had no time to argue with him, lifting her skirts to chase after the child running ahead. "Elevenor, come back at once." The carriage came charging from the opposite direction, and Elevenor stood frozen in the middle of the street, panicking as she watched it barrel toward her. Seeing this, Sheng Linghan rushed over without hesitation, pulling Elevenor to safety just as the horse's hooves narrowly missed them. A woman hurried over and scooped up the child, saying gratefully, "Thank you, young master, for saving Elevenor." But at that moment, Sheng Linghan could no longer hear a single sound. He carefully picked up the black iron pearl hairpin that had been run over by the wheel. Staring blankly at its crushed and deformed shape, this hairpin was made of black iron. How could it? Beside him, a woman's voice spoke up. "My husband is a jewelry craftsman, he could take a look at it for you." "Young master," Sheng Linghan looked up at her, a glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. Though he still hesitated, "Young master, rest assured, my shop is right over there. If you entrust the hairpin to me, you may come to collect it at marrow hour tomorrow." The woman pointed to a jewelry shop not far away. "Sorry for the trouble." In the end, Sheng Linghan handed the black iron hairpin to the woman. As night fell, Sheng Linghan returned to his room empty-handed. He picked up his brush to record all that he had seen and heard that day. After sealing the written letter in an envelope, he carefully inscribed "To my wife, Xu Yang" at its center before tucking it securely into his robe. Raising his head, he gazed at the 2 large trunks overflowing with jewelry, pastries, and other gifts, murmuring with a smile, "Yang, if you don't come back soon, the chests I brought won't be able to hold any more." The next day, the inn's attendant took advantage of a quiet moment to chat with guests who had come out for an early meal. He mentioned that a strange guest had arrived at the inn, someone who went out at night instead of sleeping and returned the next day covered in wounds. The person the attendant was referring to was none other than Sheng Linghan. The previous night, with the city under curfew, he had ventured outside the walls to search all night for Jiao Shuyang but found not a trace of her. In the process, he had been careless and suffered a bite on his arm from a nocturnal beast. He wound the bandage tightly around his arm. Layer after layer, seeing the white strip tangled messily in his hand, she couldn't help but chuckle lightly. "Ah Yang, if you were here now, you'd surely scold me for being careless, then reapply the medicine for me properly." Suddenly, he thought of something and stood up in alarm. The hairpin. Sheng Linghan rushed to the jewelry shop, disregarding the untreated wound on his arm. The woman from yesterday was busy arranging jewelry for sale in the shop. Upon seeing Sheng Linghan, she froze momentarily before retrieving a wooden jewelry box and handing it to him. "I'm sorry." Sheng Linghan opened the box to find the misshapen hairpin still safely nestled inside. Though deformed, there's still a chance for repair. If it suffers another impact, it will instantly turn to dust. The woman's voice seemed to extinguish the last shred of defense in his heart. "Impossible, absolutely impossible." Sheng Linghan absent-mindedly cradled the hairpin in his palm, his footsteps heavy as he walked out of the jewelry shop. Yang had once said, "Where the hairpin remains, there I shall be." If only he could repair the hairpin, Yang would return to his side. The sunlight outside the shop was blinding, yet for some reason, he felt an unbearable chill creeping through his body. It was as if the warmth in this world that could comfort him was slowly fading away. "Ah Yang, if you don't come back soon, I'll uproot every single one in the courtyard." His words sounded like a threat, yet his tone was softly coaxing. A gust of wind blew past, and the hairpin that had been securely held in his hand suddenly fell to the ground. The hairpin forged of black iron shattered into countless metallic dust the moment it touched the ground. Sheng Linghan froze for an instant before frantically dropping to his knees, desperately trying to gather the broken pieces. A fierce gust of wind swept through, scattering the iron powder into the air in an instant. He reached out in panic, grasping at nothing. "Yang, don't go, please don't." The sky unleashed a torrential downpour, instantly washing away the last traces on the ground. Sheng Linghan clutched his chest in agony as a gush of blood erupted from his mouth, darkness gradually engulfing his vision. That once bright light would never linger upon him again. After ensuring Jiao Shuyang and Jiao Yujie had found peace, my best friend and I had the system transport us back to our original world. Fortunately, both my best friend and I were injured but didn't lose any limbs, and because of this car accident, the insurance company compensated us with a large sum of money. We used the money to upgrade from a standard ward to a VIP ward, and after several months of recovery, we finally regained our health together. Before this, my best friend and I had already decided that once we recovered, we would travel the world, and we had made very detailed plans and itineraries. So, the first thing we did after being discharged from the hospital and returning home was to pack our bags, and the second thing was to buy plane tickets to St. Petersburg. I believe there are still many more happy moments waiting for me and my best friend in the future. The end.